In a bustling city of glass towers and silent struggles, one moment shattered everything. Elliot Crane, an untouchable CEO known for billion-dollar deals and cold efficiency, was on his way to another high-stakes meeting when he spotted something that stopped him cold. A young waitress, knees deep in a dumpster, desperately searching for a meal. That woman was Maya Bell, quiet, dignified, and broken by a system that didn't care. What began as a glance turned into an obsession. Not romantic, but human. Who was she? Why was someone who served others by day forced to scavenge by night? Driven by a conscience he thought he'd buried, Elliot embarked on a journey that would risk his reputation, defy his board, and awaken a part of him he'd long silenced. But when Maya discovers who he really is, the story takes a twist that leaves an entire town speechless. This isn't just about charity, it's about dignity, justice, and the power of one act of kindness to ignite a revolution. What happens when a CEO trades suits for service and a waitress becomes the symbol of hope for an entire city? Stay with us, because what comes next will surprise you. And it all started by a trash bin. The city never slept. Not really. It just shimmered in a different light. By day, it glistened with corporate ambition, towering skyscrapers, spotless streets lined with artisan cafes, and the constant buzz of ride shares weaving between power suits. By night, however, it whispered its secrets. Neon signs flickered with exhaustion, alleys darkened with silence, and the heartbeat of the forgotten echoed louder than the hum of success. This was Creston, a city of innovation, tech empires, and million-dollar dreams, but only for some. For the others, it was a daily war against hunger, eviction notices, rising medical bills, and the kind of loneliness that made you forget your own voice. In the penthouse of the gleaming Trivesta building, Elliot Crane, the youngest tech mogul to make Forbes' 30 Under 30 list, watched the city like a general surveying his empire. Everything below seemed manageable, controllable. Algorithms, profit margins, acquisition targets. That's how he liked things. Numbers, clean lines, solutions with outcomes. But even titans have ghosts. Elliot had grown up in this very city, though you'd never know it. He rarely spoke of the South Side, of the two-bedroom apartment he'd shared with his mother and younger sister, or the food stamps that sometimes barely lasted the week. That life was a different chapter, one he'd slammed shut with steel determination. Success wasn't just a goal for Elliot, it was revenge. That night, he was in his armored black SUV, heading back from yet another investor gala, another hollow room of applause and flattery. He stared blankly out the tinted window, mind drifting between an upcoming IPO and an underperforming product line. That's when he saw her. At first, she was just a shadow in the alley, but the SUV stopped at a red light, and the spotlight of a street lamp revealed her more clearly. A woman, maybe mid-20s, maybe younger, was kneeling beside a dumpster behind a closed diner. She wasn't rummaging with chaos or madness. No, her movements were deliberate, almost surgical. She pulled out a plastic container, opened it, sniffed it, then hesitated before taking a small bite. Her shoulders slumped, whether from shame or exhaustion, Elliot couldn't tell. "Sir," his driver asked, "something wrong?" Elliot didn't answer. His gaze was fixed, breath caught in his throat. The woman wiped her hands on her apron, placed the container back in the dumpster as if that somehow preserved its dignity, and stood up. It was her eyes that struck him the most. not because they met his, she hadn't seen him, but because they looked like they'd seen everything. Pain, yes, but not defeat. Hunger, but not desperation. Those eyes had fire left in them, the kind that could start something. The light turned green. The car rolled forward. Elliot sat back slowly, something shifting inside him. He'd attended thousands of meetings, heard countless pitches, and closed monumental deals, but he couldn't recall the last time something had truly moved him. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story, but for the first time in a long while, he wanted to know more than a quarterly forecast. He wanted to understand. Because that night, under the cold neon breath of a sleepless city, Elliot Crane was reminded of something he hadn't felt in years. Humanity. What he didn't realize, at least not yet, was that this moment wasn't random. It wasn't a footnote in his busy day. It was the opening line to a story that would soon engulf him, force him to choose between comfort and conscience, and leave an entire town questioning what it meant to matter. The city of secrets had whispered one more truth, and this time, someone had listened. Elliot Crane's mornings were as predictable as a metronome. Up at 5, black coffee, no sugar, a 6-mile run on the treadmill facing the skyline, followed by a cold shower and a barrage of market updates streaming across 6 monitors in his home office. Efficiency wasn't just a habit, it was a doctrine. But this morning, something was off. He sat longer than usual with his untouched coffee, the steam rising quietly as his mind replayed the image from the night before. The girl, the dumpster, the look on her face. 1,000 pitches had failed to hold his attention for more than 2 minutes. Yet here he was, unable to stop thinking about a stranger behind a diner. The boardroom was a cathedral of polished glass and masculine energy. As Elliot stepped in, assistants straightened, executives adjusted their ties, and presentations clicked to the ready. But Elliot barely noticed. As his CFO droned on about quarterly burn rates, Elliot stared past him, out the floor-to-ceiling window. Somewhere beyond the city's glass armor was a woman who ate from trash, but carried herself like royalty in exile. He cut the meeting short. Something urgent came up, he said. A lie. But the urgency was real. That afternoon, dressed down in a hoodie and jeans, his version of camouflage, Elliot walked the side streets of Creston alone. He avoided the main roads, turning into alleys, past dumpsters and back doors, places his driver had never taken him. He walked past the diner. It was modest, half lit by a blinking neon sign that read Annie's Place. A few patrons sat inside, construction workers, bus drivers, a couple of teenagers. No suits. And then he saw her. She was behind the counter, hair pulled back in a messy bun, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She smiled at an older man nursing coffee, then wiped the table clean with gentle efficiency. It was her, no question. Elliot watched through the glass for a few moments longer. There was no sign of distress on her face, no trace of last night's desperation. She looked normal, and that unsettled him more than if she'd looked broken. How could someone live 2 completely different realities within 24 hours? He stepped inside. The chime of the door was small but sharp, and she turned. Their eyes met briefly. He took a booth in the corner, pulling out his phone, not to check stocks, but to keep from staring. She approached with a smile that felt well practiced. "Coffee?" she asked. He nodded. "Anything else?" "Not yet." She left, and he watched her walk away, her movements precise, like every second mattered. He realized she hadn't recognized him. That was good. He didn't want to be the CEO today. He wanted to be someone who understood. Annie's place had been around longer than most Creston condos. It had that untouched charm, plaid booths, grease-stained menus, and a jukebox that only played old soul tracks. The kind of place that refused to modernize, and in doing so felt like a secret kept alive by the people who still remembered how to struggle with dignity. Maya Bell didn't like working nights, but they paid more, and they kept her away from home, which, ever since her brother's condition worsened, had started to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a battlefield. She'd learned to mask tiredness with banter, worry with warmth. Her customers didn't need to see her pain. They had enough of their own. She was invisible to most, and that was fine. Until today. The man in the hoodie wasn't like the others. He barely looked at his phone. He sipped his coffee slowly, eyes drifting across the room, but always returning to her. Not in a creepy way, more like someone trying to solve a puzzle. "Refill?" she asked, approaching. "Sure." His voice was calm, deep, controlled. She poured and tried not to linger, but he spoke again. "You work here every night?" "Most." "Must be exhausting." She laughed. "You get used to it." Still not right. That caught her off guard. Most customers ignored her existence. This one seemed aware. "I've had worse," she replied, offering a tight smile. Elliot nodded, studying her face. There it was again, that spark. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't begging. She was surviving with grace. And it bothered him how rare that was. He left $100 tip and walked out. Maya stared after him, brow furrowed. She didn't know who he was, but something told her he wasn't just another customer, and she was right. Night fell fast in Creston. The streets that sparkled by day turned solemn under the yellow wash of sodium lights. Maya's shift ended at midnight, but she stayed late, helping Annie tally receipts. It wasn't expected, but Maya believed in giving more than she received, even when she had little to give. Meanwhile, Elliot sat in the back seat of his car, parked across the street from the diner. He didn't know why he was there. Surveillance wasn't his style, but he couldn't leave it alone. She haunted him, not as a mystery to solve, but a truth to confront. Through the diner's window, he saw her laughing with an older woman. She was real, alive, carrying a weight no one should bear. She stepped outside, tying a scarf around her neck, and began walking toward the subway station. Elliot's eyes followed her until she turned a corner and disappeared. He didn't follow this time. Instead, he sat there, thinking. The woman in the alley wasn't just a symptom of poverty. She was the face of everything the city tried to forget. And now she had a name, a voice, and soon the world would hear it. Because Elliot Crane had made a decision. He wasn't letting this story go. Elliot Crane was not easily rattled. He'd stared down industry titans, steered trillion-dollar mergers, and been named Tech Visionary of the Year 3 years running. But none of that prepared him for the quiet after Maya disappeared down that alley. For the first time in years, control was slipping through his fingers, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to stop it. He returned to his penthouse high above the sleeping city, but everything felt hollow. The sleek lines, imported furniture, the art no one actually liked. All of it seemed absurdly detached from the woman eating cold leftovers from a trash bin. The lie he'd built his life upon, that success insulated you from pain, had cracked open, and now it was bleeding questions. He opened his laptop, not to work, but to search. He typed Annie's place, clicked through images, Yelp reviews, Google listings. No mention of Maya, no way to trace her directly. Frustrated, he leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Who was she? What kind of system demanded that someone like her, hard-working, gentle, resilient, had to steal calories to survive? The next morning, Elliot skipped his meetings. His assistant was stunned. "Are you sick?" she asked. "In a way," he muttered. He returned to Annie's, but Maya wasn't there. A different waitress, older and slower, greeted him. He asked for Maya casually, pretending to forget her name. "Oh, Maya," the woman said. "She's off today. Takes care of her brother on Wednesdays. Sweet girl." Elliot left a generous tip again, but this time he felt defeated. Maya had a life beyond the diner, one he had no access to. And that truth, that he couldn't just solve her like an algorithm, was the real shock. Back in his office, he stared out at the skyline that once inspired him. All those glass towers and capital gains meant nothing if people like Maya had to beg the shadows to feed themselves. It wasn't just a personal dilemma now, it was a reckoning. The thing about guilt is that it doesn't shout, it whispers. It seeps into the quiet moments when the world slows down just enough for you to feel what you've been running from. Elliot Crane had built a life on momentum, but now every pause was haunted by her. He needed to find Maya, not just to understand her, but to understand himself. So he did what CEOs do best. He leveraged resources. He called a private investigator he'd used before to vet executive hires. Gave him the only clue he had. Maya, early 20s, works nights at Annie's Place Diner, South Creston. The investigator raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. Discretion was his business. As the man got to work, Elliot did something he hadn't done in years. He walked. He started showing up in South Creston regularly, without security, without entourage. Locals began to recognize him, though most didn't believe it was really him. What would a billionaire be doing around here? He returned to Annie's place again. This time, Maya was there. She was sweeping the floor, humming something under her breath. A song from the jukebox, maybe. He didn't enter right away. Instead, he stood across the street, hidden partially by a tree, watching, studying, not in a predatory way, but like someone trying to memorize a dream before it faded. A part of him knew he should approach her. Another part knew he wasn't ready for whatever truth she might hand him. Later that evening, his phone buzzed. The investigator had a report. Maya Bell, the text read, age 26, lives in a rent-controlled apartment off Harris Avenue, lives with younger brother Ben, 17, disabled. Father died 2 years ago. Mother estranged. Medical bills piled up. 1 eviction notice on record, working 2 jobs, studied nursing but dropped out. No criminal record. Elliot stared at the message, letting each fact land like a stone in water. There was no scam here, no manipulation, just hard facts, harder lives. He opened his laptop and looked up Harris Avenue. The building was run down. 2 stars on Google, mold complaints, landlord lawsuits. He closed the lid. Then I picked up the phone. "Cancel my week," he told his assistant. "All of it." "You okay, sir?" "No," he said quietly, "but I'm about to be." He didn't know exactly what he was going to do. He just knew he had to do something. For her brother, for every person who had been reduced to a statistic in a report. That night, Elliot didn't sleep. The world had changed. Or maybe it always looked like this, and he had just begun to see it clearly. Maya noticed the man in the hoodie again. This time he was seated near the window, alone like before, sipping his coffee slowly. There was something strange about him. His clothes said casual, but his posture said composed, powerful. She hadn't pegged him for a regular, but this made it his third visit. She approached with practiced ease. "Back again?" He smiled slightly. "Yeah, good coffee." "People don't usually come here for the coffee." "I guess I'm not most people." She raised an eyebrow, curious but too tired to ask more. Instead, she poured his refill and walked away. Elliot watched her carefully, not like an investor watching a pitch, but like a person trying to understand a poem written in a language he'd long forgotten. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, maybe signs of anger, of defeat, but all he saw was strength. Not the loud kind that made speeches, the quiet kind that swept floors after a 12-hour shift without complaint. She laughed at a joke a customer told, helped an elderly man into a booth, gave a crying toddler a cookie from behind the counter, free of charge. Elliot realized something in that moment. She didn't just survive in this place, she gave it life. Later, as the diner emptied and Maya finally caught a break, Elliot made his move. He waited until she sat with a glass of water, her hair coming loose from its bun. "Mind if I join you for a minute?" he asked. She looked up, surprised but not defensive. "Sure, booth's all yours." He sat across from her. "Your name's Maya, right?" She nodded. "And you are—" "Elliot." She tilted her head. "You don't look like an Elliot." He chuckled. "I get that a lot." A pause hung between them, not awkward, but weighted. "So, Elliot," she said, "are you just a guy who really likes this diner, or are you trying to sell it to Starbucks?" He grinned. "Neither, just trying to understand something I saw." She squinted at him, unsure if he was joking. "I saw you a few nights ago, behind this place, near the dumpster." Her face froze, her posture tightened, eyes suddenly distant. "You followed me?" "No," he said quickly. "I was just there. My car stopped at the light. I saw you. I didn't know what to do. I'm not trying to embarrass you." Silence. Maya stood slowly. "Thanks for the honesty. But you've seen what you came to see." He didn't try to stop her. Instead, he said, "You shouldn't have to live like that." She turned back, eyes flaring. "You think I want to?" "No," he replied calmly. "I think the world's broken, and you've been left to carry the weight." That made her pause. "I'm not here to fix you," he added. "I just want to understand how we let this happen." She studied him as if trying to detect a hidden agenda, but there was no smirk, no pity, no promise, just sincerity and confusion. The tension in her shoulders eased. "You can't fix the world, Elliot," she said. "People have tried. It's not that simple." "Maybe not, but we could try to fix one corner of it. Maybe starting here." She didn't answer, just nodded slightly, like someone who'd heard it all before but wasn't ready to believe again. When she walked away, Elliot didn't follow. He sat there for a long time, listening to the jukebox play an old tune about dreams and disappointment. He realized something else that night. You don't just witness someone's pain and walk away. Not if you're human, not anymore. It was a slow Tuesday evening when Elliot returned to Annie's place. Again, the rain outside came down in light sheets, tapping rhythmically against the diner windows. Inside, the usual cast of characters huddled in booths and counter stools, sipping from chipped mugs and waiting out the storm. Maya was there, hair damp from the weather, her apron a little more worn than the week before. She moved with the kind of exhaustion that didn't just come from long hours. It came from years of long hours. But still she smiled. It wasn't a performance. Not quite. It was a choice. A decision to face the world with something kinder than what it had offered her. Elliot noticed that in her first few minutes working the room. Every smile she gave wasn't forced. It was resilient. When she saw him, she hesitated, but then approached. "You're becoming a regular." He nodded. "Can't stay away from your coffee." She smirked. "Still not that good." He leaned forward. "It's not the coffee." For a moment, the silence between them felt electric. Then she looked away, flustered. "You want the usual?" "Sure." As she poured his coffee, Elliot studied the other patrons. A bus driver hunched over his meal, a teenage couple sharing fries, two elderly women laughing softly. This place, it had soul, not the kind that could be charted on a graph or modeled in data, but the kind that made people feel seen. When Maya returned, she slid into the booth across from him, uninvited but somehow expected. "You're not just some guy, are you?" she asked. He smiled. "I don't think I've ever been just anything." She raised an eyebrow. "I run a company," he admitted. "Tech, apps, software. You've probably never heard of it, but you've probably used it." "Is that supposed to impress me?" "No," he said sincerely. "I'm trying not to lie to you." She studied him again. "So what are you doing here?" He exhaled, trying to remember what real life looks like. She didn't respond right away, just stirred her tea slowly. "Ben's birthday is next week," she said suddenly. "Ben!" "My brother. He's turning 18. We're doing takeout and a Netflix marathon. That's the budget." Elliot hesitated. "What's he like?" "He's smarter than I'll ever be. Has a thing for space documentaries. I want to be an engineer. Can't afford the school, but he still reads the textbooks every night." Elliot felt his throat tighten. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked softly. "Because I think maybe you're not pretending," she said. "And I want you to know who you saw behind that dumpster." And just like that, a smile broke across her face, one not born from pain or necessity, but from pride, her brother, in herself. In life, she had protected everything she had left. Elliot looked at her and saw the truth. She wasn't a charity case. She was a hero, and it was time the world saw her that way too. The next morning, Elliot found himself staring at his closet, suddenly conscious of how many suits he owned. He picked the least formal one, charcoal gray, no tie, and headed to the office. But his mind wasn't on numbers or markets or the product launch he was supposed to approve. It was on May A. He hadn't planned to see her again so soon, but the idea came to him as naturally as breathing. That afternoon he made a stop at a boutique florist, then walked a few blocks to Annie's place. He stepped inside, holding a single sunflower. She saw him and froze, mid-order. Did someone die? He chuckled. Number, but I was wondering if you'd come to dinner with me. She blinked. Dinner? Tomorrow night. It's a gala. My company hosts one every year. Fancy food, speeches, boring people. But it might be less boring if you were there. She looked at him, both amused and wary. You're serious? He held out the flower. I wouldn't bring a sunflower if I wasn't. She stared at it for a long moment, then slowly reached out and took it. Okay, she said. But if it gets weird, I'm sneaking out the back. Deal. He left with a grin, and for the first time in a long while, she felt it too, a flicker of something like hope. And outside, beneath the setting sun, Creston began to feel just a little warmer. Elliot's company headquarters stood like a silver fortress against the blue skyline. Sleek, angular, and unapologetically modern, it was a physical testament to his success and a barrier to anyone who didn't belong. Inside, the boardroom was already humming with tension. Executives in tailored suits lined the long oak table. Glass walls offered a panoramic view of the city, but no one was looking at the skyline. They were waiting for him. Elliot entered calm as ever, though his mind was elsewhere. We need to discuss the Indonesia bid, his COO began. They're pulling back unless we restructure. And the quarterly projections are off by 2%, someone else added. We'll need to pivot. Elliot nodded slowly. He heard them, but their voices felt distant. Not because he didn't care, but because something had shifted inside him. Numbers used to be his language, but now they felt flat. We'll approve the new terms, he said, just not at the expense of staff. That raised some eyebrows. Excuse me? The CFO asked. Are we not prioritizing shareholder value? We're prioritizing people, Elliot said, or there won't be a company left to run. Silence. That wasn't the Elliot they knew. The man who once cut entire departments to meet targets. The man who let data dictate every decision. He didn't elaborate, let them wonder, let them talk, because he had other plans today, ones that didn't include another hour of hollow justifications. After the meeting, he retreated to his office. It was floor-to-ceiling elegance, marble desk, touch-screen panels, and furniture so pristine it looked unused. And maybe that was the problem. Nothing here felt lived in. He loosened his collar, sat by the window, and pulled up Maya's social media, what little existed. A few tagged posts from co-workers, photos of her and her brother at a community festival, and one blurry picture of her smiling in a hospital corridor. She was wearing scrubs. The caption read, "One day." She had been trying to be a nurse. Somewhere along the way, the world told her no, and now he was about to bring her into his. The gala was tomorrow, and while he'd been to more than he could count, this one felt different, because she would be there, and he didn't know what would happen when those two worlds collided. But part of him hoped it would be messy, because maybe that was what this place needed, a little disruption. Maya stood in front of her cracked bathroom mirror, holding the invitation card Elliot had dropped off with the sunflower. The card was embossed in gold, elegant in a way that felt like fiction. She'd stared at it for 20 minutes before deciding. Now the decision was real. She borrowed a dress from a neighbor, black, simple, modest. It fit well enough. Her hair she pinned up herself, using a trick she'd learned from a YouTube tutorial. Makeup was minimal. She didn't have time or patience for more. Ben sat on the couch as she emerged, looking up from his tablet. His eyes widened. "Whoa!" She laughed. "Too much? Number. You look like those people on the magazines at the checkout." "You mean exhausted and photoshopped?" He smirked. "Number. You look like someone who doesn't belong in this dump." Her smile faltered for a moment. "Thanks, Ben." "You nervous?" "A little." "Don't be," he said. "You're better than all of them." She kissed his forehead and stepped outside, nerves climbing her spine like ivy. Elliot was already waiting in a sleek black car. He stepped out as she approached, his suit tailored, his presence careful. "You look," he began. She cut him off. "Let's just pretend I do and go." He smiled, opened the door, and they drove into the city lights. The gala was in a grand ballroom at the top of the Meridian Hotel, a glass structure surrounded by wealth and oblivion. As they entered, all eyes turned, not just because of Elliot, he was expected, but because of her, a girl they didn't recognize, a story they hadn't prepared for. Champagne flutes clinked, strings played something delicate. Maya felt her spine stiffen. Elliot leaned close. "Just breathe. You're doing fine. I feel like a piece of misplaced furniture. You're the only real thing in this room." A man in a navy suit approached, smiling with calculation. "Elliot, glad you made it. And who is this?" "This is Maya," Elliot said simply. The man looked surprised but recovered fast. "Charming. Lovely to meet you." Maya nodded, her voice sticking to the back of her throat. "You too." They mingled, or rather, Elliot mingled and Maya followed, sipping ginger ale and studying the room like it was a foreign planet. She watched people who never worried about rent, never feared the knock of a landlord, never had to skip meals to pay for medicine. And yet, here she was, among them. It wasn't hate she felt. It was clear. These people weren't evil, just untouched. And maybe that was the real problem. Near the end of the night, Elliot took the stage for a short speech. "Tonight," he said, "is about more than profit. It's about potential. Not just market growth, but human growth." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd, then resting on Maya. "There are people outside these walls who work harder than anyone in here, and still don't get noticed. That's not meritocracy, that's failure, ours." A beat of silence, then polite applause. Some confused, some inspired. Maya watched him descend the stage, wondering if he truly meant it, because if he did, everything was about to change. The night air outside the Meridian Hotel was thick with the scent of city life, perfume, exhaust, ambition. Elliot and Maya stepped into the cool darkness, leaving behind the golden glow of chandeliers and champagne. Neither of them spoke at first. The silence wasn't awkward, just full. She broke it. "You surprised me there." "How so?" "Didn't expect the CEO of a billion-dollar company to give a speech about people like me." "People like you," he echoed. "You mean people who work twice as hard for half as much?" She glanced at him. "You say it like it's unfair." "It is." She walked a few paces ahead, then stopped. "You don't have to do this, you know, whatever this is." "I know." "Then why are you?" He stepped beside her. "Because I saw something that night. Behind that diner. You could have looked defeated, but you didn't. You looked like someone who refused to let the world crush her, and I couldn't forget it." She studied his face. People see pain every day. Most walk past it. I didn't want to be like most people anymore. That answer hung between them, too honest to dismiss. They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by the sounds of traffic, distant sirens, and the city's endless pulse. Maya exhaled slowly. You want to know something funny? Always. I didn't eat that food for me. He turned, surprised. It was for my brother, Ben. He was too proud to ask for more groceries, and I didn't have the tips that night. So I waited until the diner closed and checked the trash for anything not spoiled. I'd done it before, but that night, I think I was too tired to feel ashamed. Elliot said nothing. What words could possibly match that? He didn't know, she added. I told him I found leftovers in the break room fridge. He nodded slowly. I think I needed to hear that. She gave a soft, almost bitter laugh. Why? So you can build a better app for food waste? No, he said gently, so I never forget what it means to be hungry. They walked the rest of the block in silence, then stood at the curb as his car pulled around. He opened the door for her, but she didn't get in immediately. I don't know what this is, Elliot, or what you want from me. He shook his head. I'm not asking for anything, just the chance to keep learning. From you. From this. She studied him one last time, then nodded and stepped into the car. That night neither of them slept much, for different reasons, but the same ache. Change was coming. They both felt it. The following morning brought clouds that hung low and gray over the city, like a waiting verdict. Elliot sat alone in his office, blinds drawn, looking at a folder he hadn't opened in years. It was labeled simply, Mom. Inside were hospital bills, old photos, her death certificate. She passed when he was 24, just after he'd secured his first round of funding. He remembered calling her from the boardroom excited, only to hear a nurse pick up her phone instead. He didn't go to the funeral. He told himself it was timing, logistics. But the truth was simpler. He was ashamed. She'd worked night shifts at a textile factory until her bones ached, raised 2 kids on minimum wage, went without so he could have shoes for school, and he repaid her with distance, with ambition. Success, he had believed, would make her sacrifices mean something. But sitting here in a chair worth more than what she earned in a month, he wasn't so sure anymore. He picked up a photo, her holding a small boy in front of a rundown apartment. His sister's hand was on his shoulder. He remembered that day. She'd made rice and eggs stretch for 3 days so they could have a small birthday cake. Elliot closed his eyes. That was where he came from, and he had forgotten. That night Maya had cracked something open. But this was the rupture. He walked out of his office, past surprised assistants and frozen executives, down the elevator, out into the street, into a part of the city no one in his world talked about. He stopped at the building he once called home. It was still there, peeling paint, broken intercom, the smell of old cement and second-hand dreams. A woman opened the door, holding groceries. She looked at him cautiously. "Hi," he said. "I used to live here, long time ago." She nodded slowly. "You're that guy on TV, right? The tech one." "I guess I am." She shifted. "Why are you here?" He looked around. "To remember." She didn't ask more, just let the door close behind her. Later, he stood across the street and stared at the building as if it held the answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. He didn't feel powerful there. He felt small and humans. The next day, he called a meeting, not with his executives, but with his philanthropy team. "We're changing our focus," he told them. "To what?" one asked. "To the people we forgot." He didn't give details yet. He didn't have all the answers, but he had clarity, and sometimes that's the most radical beginning of all. The venue sparkled. Gold-trimmed tablecloths, waiters in black vests, crystal chandeliers that looked like they had never seen dust. It was a gala designed to impress, to remind people of their place in the world and who sat above it. Maya sat beside Elliot at a table near the stage, but her mind wasn't there. Not really. She watched the room with quiet calculation, noting the effortless laughter, the subtle arrogance, the unchecked comfort. They weren't bad people necessarily, just insulated. She felt like a guest at a play staged in another language. Elliot noticed her discomfort. "If you want to leave, say the word." She shook her head. "Number, I need to see this." As if on cue, an MC took the stage. Applause echoed. Speeches began. Words like synergy, expansion, and global potential floated in the air like perfume. Then they introduced Elliot. He didn't read from the teleprompter. Instead, he told them a story. "I once saw a young woman eating out of a dumpster," he said plainly. "She wasn't homeless. She had a job. She had responsibilities. She just didn't have enough to eat." The room fell silent. She did it not for herself, but for her brother. She did it quietly, with dignity, and she kept going. Maya's breath caught in her throat. "I watched her from the comfort of my car. Then I went home to a penthouse with leftovers I didn't touch. That moment, watching her, changed me." There were murmurs, confused glances. I realized I was surrounded by luxury built on the backs of people like her. We profit off convenience while others make impossible choices just to live. He stepped away from the podium. And that ends now. Applause came slowly. Some are polite, some are hesitant. A few faces looked uncomfortable. Maya sat still, unmoving. Later, as they left the ballroom, she pulled him aside. "You didn't use my name." "I didn't think I had the right." She nodded slowly. "Thank you." "I meant every word." "I know," she said, "and that scares me more than if you hadn't." The days that followed were unlike anything Elliot had experienced. His speech had gone viral. Clips circulated online, stripped of context and turned into headlines. CEO calls out wealth culture at luxury gala. Some praised him, others mocked him. Investors panicked. Public support soared. His PR team scrambled. Maya, meanwhile, returned to the diner. She didn't want attention. She wanted normalcy. But normal was gone. Customers asked if she was that girl. Some left larger tips. Others avoided eye contact. One news crew even tried to stake out the parking lot. Annie, the diner's owner, was supportive. "You didn't ask for this," she said, "but maybe you can do something with it." Maya didn't answer. She wasn't sure what something meant anymore. At home, Ben scrolled through articles on his tablet. "You're famous now," he teased. "I didn't do anything." "You existed," he said, "and someone noticed." She sighed. "That shouldn't be rare." "It is." Later that night, Elliot called her. Meet me tomorrow, he said. There's something I want you to see. They met at a modest office space downtown. Inside, blueprints and project outlines were tacked on the walls. A dozen staff members worked behind desks. It didn't look corporate, it looked like a startup. "What is this?" she asked. "A foundation," he said. "Yours if you want it." She blinked. "Mine?" "It'll help fund food access programs, job training, and affordable housing initiatives, run by people who've lived through it, not just people who studied it." She looked at him carefully. "And you're just handing this to me?" "I'm giving you the option, because I think the voice that changed me could do the same for others." She didn't respond right away, but for the first time since the alley, she allowed herself to hope, not just for herself, but for everyone else who hadn't been seen yet. Word traveled fast in Creston. In neighborhoods where rent took half a paycheck and food stamps never stretched far enough, whispers turned into conversations. Conversations became momentum. "Did you hear what he said? Is it true? Is someone really doing something?" At first, it felt like a rumor. Then came the confirmation. Flyers posted in laundromats and clinics, job fairs hosted in community centers, pop-up health checks. Food trucks serve free hot meals, not expired cans, all stamped with a new logo, the Bell Initiative. Maya hadn't picked the name. Elliot had insisted. "You're the reason," he said. "This is your story." She resisted at first, uncomfortable with the spotlight. But then she saw what it did. It made people listen, not to her, but to them. The ones who'd been ignored too long. At the diner, business increased. Not from tourists, but locals. People came just to say, "Thank you." One woman cried over her coffee, saying her son was finally on a wait list for housing. A young man offered to volunteer. Even Annie smiled more. "You've made something real," she told Maya. Maya didn't say much. She was still learning to carry it all, the pressure, the gratitude, the responsibility. But when she walked the streets of her neighborhood now, people met her eyes, not with pity, but pride. And that made all the difference. Elliot stood before the board of directors for Trivesta Global, the very machine he'd built and now threatened to change. 12 men and women in suits, some younger than him, others old enough to have once dismissed him as a scrappy upstart, stared him down like he was a stranger in his own house. "You've made headlines," the chairman said, sliding a stack of printouts across the table. "Again." Elliot didn't flinch. That's what happens when you tell the truth. A younger board member leaned forward. "You didn't just tell the truth, you exposed us. You made us look like villains." "I said we benefit from systems that hurt people. If that makes us uncomfortable, maybe we should be." An older woman at the end of the table spoke next. "This Maya Bell initiative, you're using company capital for community projects that provide no direct return." "I disagree," Elliot replied. "It provides the most important return, trust, purpose. People believe that Trivesta stands for something beyond profits. That's not what shareholders signed up for." "Maybe shareholders need to evolve." A pause. He continued, "We talk about innovation, but only when it serves technology, not when it asks us to look at ourselves." "You're gambling the future of this company on a story," someone muttered. "No," Elliot said, calm and deliberate. "I'm betting on a truth bigger than our quarterly margins." There was more debate, raised voices, thinly veiled threats. But Elliot stayed grounded, not defensive, certain. When the meeting ended, no one clapped. But no one removed him either. Outside the boardroom, his assistant waited nervously. "Well?" she asked. He smiled. "They're scared." "Is that good?" "It means they're listening." The news broke 2 days later. A leaked email, internal documents, financial summaries of the Bell Initiative's funding. At first, the leak appeared intended to shame him. Proof, the anonymous tipster suggested, that Elliot Crane was diverting corporate money for personal crusades. But the story didn't unfold that way. Instead, it lit a fire. CEO redirects corporate funding to help working-class families. Maya Bell Initiative expands. Millions allocated to community recovery. Tech mogul turns philanthropy into purpose. Online, the public responded with fervor. Stories poured in. Single mothers who had found affordable daycare, seniors getting prescription assistance, teens learning job skills through free mentorship. But not everyone celebrated. Elliot received hate mail, anonymous threats, accusations of virtue signaling. Some media pundits questioned his motives. "No billionaire helps people without an angel," one host scoffed. And then someone posted the photo, a grainy image of Maya behind the diner, crouched by a dumpster, food container in hand. It went viral in hours. Maya didn't know until she arrived for work and saw a reporter waiting outside. "Miss Bell, did you really eat from the trash?" The question was sharp, cutting. She turned, walked inside, and went straight to the back. Elliot arrived at the diner minutes later. She was already in the kitchen, back against the wall, arms crossed tightly. "I didn't ask for this," she said, not looking at him. "I know. They made me a symbol. Now they're making me a punchline." He stepped closer. "You're neither. You're a mirror. And some people don't like what they see in it." She looked up, eyes filled not with tears, but anger. "I didn't want attention. I wanted change. Quiet, steady change." "Then let me remind them what this is about." She hesitated. "And what if they don't care?" He shrugged. "Then we care louder." The mayor of Creston stood on a temporary stage in the middle of Market Street, flanked by local leaders, neighborhood activists, and Elliot Crane. Microphones buzzed, cameras clicked. Hundreds of residents filled the street. Some held signs, "We see you, Maya, from diner to dreamer. This is what hope looks like." Maya stood near the front, not on the stage, but among the crowd. She didn't want to be elevated. She wanted to belong. Elliot stepped forward and began. "This city has long measured success by what it builds. Glass towers, tech campuses, high-speed trains. But what if we measured it differently?" He let the question linger. What if we measured success by the number of people who no longer have to choose between medicine and rent, between feeding their kids or themselves? A few people clapped. "We've built walls of ambition. Now we need to build bridges of equity." He turned toward the crowd, not the cameras. "This isn't charity, it's justice. We're not giving handouts. We're giving back what was taken, opportunity, dignity, and the right to be seen." The applause grew louder. He finished simply. "We started with one person, one story, one act of courage, and now we change this city." That night, the video went global. But it wasn't Elliot's speech that trended. It was the clip of Maya after the event, hugging a young mother who whispered, "You saved me." It was the moment a city realized this wasn't about pity. It was about power returning to the people it belonged to all along, and it started in the quietest place, by a trash bin, behind a diner, in a city too busy to notice, until someone finally did. Elliot hadn't been to the south side of Creston in over a decade. It was only a 20-minute drive from the towers of Trevesta's headquarters, but it might as well have been another world. The buildings were the same: sagging balconies, laundry hangs like quiet prayers, corner stores that smelled like childhood and dust. He walked slowly, no security, no entourage, just a coat, a hoodie underneath, and hands shoved into his pockets. He paused in front of the rusted gate of his old apartment building. Number 5B. He remembered how it sounded when his mother's keys jingled, the way the hallway always smelled faintly of mildew and detergent, how the floor creaked at night when she came in late from work, thinking her kids were asleep. It all came back in pieces, his sister's laughter echoing down the stairwell, the fights over who got the last hot shower, the silence that fell when the power got cut off and they lit candles like it was a game. He climbed the stairs, slow and reverent. At the top, the door was new, but the number plate was the same. He reached out and touched it like it might unlock something buried. A woman came out from the apartment next door. She eyed him cautiously. "You looking for someone?" He smiled gently. Number just visiting an old ghost. She didn't ask more. In neighborhoods like this, everyone had ghosts. Some stayed longer than others. After she went inside, he sat on the steps and pulled out a photo from his wallet. It was folded and worn, the edges soft from years of being forgotten. His mother holding him in one arm and his sister in the other. They were standing right here in this very stairwell. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Then he whispered into the hallway, "I'm sorry it took me so long to come back." He didn't expect an answer, but he left with something heavier than closure: responsibility. Later that day, he visited 3 schools, a food bank, and a medical clinic the Bell Initiative had helped support. Not with the press, not with photographers, just to look into eyes, shake hands, ask questions. He ended the night at a community shelter sharing dinner with a man who reminded him of his old landlord, rough voice, soft heart. When he returned home, it was almost midnight. Maya was waiting for him in the lobby. "You didn't tell me where you were going," she said. "I needed to do it alone." She studied him. He looked tired, but not from work, from feeling. "Did you find what you were looking for?" He nodded slowly. "I found where I left myself." She didn't ask more. They stood in silence for a long while before walking into the elevator together. Sometimes the deepest changes don't need words. It was a cold Thursday when Maya found out. She was on her break at the diner, sipping lukewarm tea, when her co-worker Annie rushed over with her phone. "You need to see this." It was an article, one of the tabloids. "Waitress at center of billionaire's philanthropy, real or PR prop." The headline slapped harder than expected. It continued, "Maya Bell, a once unknown waitress, has become the face of one of the city's most radical community shifts. But critics question her authenticity and whether she was a calculated pawn in a PR campaign crafted by Trivesta CEO Elliot Crane." The article dug deep. Photos, timelines. They even interviewed someone who claimed Maya was exaggerating her story. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she scrolled. She didn't care about fame, never wanted it. But this felt like a betrayal of her struggle, like her truth was being dissected without permission. She stepped outside, the chill air biting at her skin. By the time Elliot arrived at the diner, she was gone. He found her hours later at the edge of the city park, sitting on a bench where the trees were skeletal and the street lamps buzzed faintly overhead. She didn't look up when he sat beside her. "I saw it," he said. She nodded. "They think I'm a liar." "No," he said softly. "They're afraid of what your truth makes them see." She turned to him. "This was supposed to be about helping people, not proving I deserve help." He exhaled. The world has a strange way of punishing authenticity. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know. I just wanted to feed my brother, keep a roof, hold on to some dignity." "You did more than that," he said. "You forced people to look, and now they're trying to look away again. But they won't. Not this time." She was quiet for a while. Then, "What if they keep coming?" The headlines, the doubt, the shame. "Then we tell the truth louder," he said. "Together?" She finally looked at him, and in her eyes he saw it. Not hope yet, but something more dangerous. Conviction. Because if they wanted a fight, Maya Bell was ready to give them one, and this time she wouldn't be alone. The next morning the diner was quiet, too quiet. Maya stood behind the counter, wiping it down for the third time, though it was already spotless. Outside, clouds gathered like judgment, casting long shadows over the windows. Annie tried to offer comfort. "It'll blow over. These things always do." But Maya knew better. The media didn't let stories blow over. They twisted them until the truth suffocated. She didn't flinch when the bell above the door rang. Elliot entered, a newspaper folded under his arm. "They're still at it," he said, laying the paper on the counter. Another headline: "The Waitress Who Fooled a Billionaire." She looked down, dryly. "Nice to know I've been upgraded to cunning." Elliot leaned on the counter. "They're not attacking you, Maya. They're defending their own indifference." "I never asked for attention." "You didn't need to. The truth drew it in." She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. Once people think you're lying, it sticks." Elliot's voice softened. "Do you want to fight back?" She looked up slowly. "I don't want to be a symbol. I want to be a person. I want people to see what I've lived, not what they imagine it must be." "Then let's show them." That night, Maya did something she never thought she would. She sat in front of a camera, not for an interview, not for an ad, for a statement. Raw, simple, unpolished. She told her story, without glamour, without tears, without music swelling in the background. "I'm Maya Bell," she said. "I work nights at a diner in South Creston. I take care of my brother Ben. I've skipped meals to feed him. I've fought eviction, battled medical bills. And yes, once I ate out of a trash bin, not because I'm ashamed, because I survived." The video lasted 4 minutes. Within 6 hours, it was everywhere. Within 12, it had millions of views. The world stopped arguing and started listening. The fallout was immediate and electric. Support flooded in: letters, emails, donations, offers to help. Stories poured out from people who had never dared to share their own. Mothers working double shifts, students skipping meals to afford textbooks, fathers sleeping in cars to make room for their children. For every hateful comment, 100 came in love. But more importantly, something else happened. Change. Schools asked how they could join the Bell Initiative. Nonprofits called, wanting to partner. Local businesses offered food, space, and services. Entire neighborhoods mobilized around Maya's story, not just to praise it, but to replicate it. Elliot watched it unfold like an avalanche of truth he hadn't expected, but had always hoped for. He called a press conference, no flash, no podium, just a folding table in front of City Hall. Maya sat beside him. "We're not asking for sympathy," he began. "We're building something, together." He announced a new round of funding, $25 million. Not from Trivesta, from his own holdings. The crowd gasped. Reporters fired off questions. "Is this your response to the criticism?" "No," he answered. "This is my response to reality." Maya spoke next. "We're not here to blame anyone. We're here to remind people our lives are real, our pain is real, our dignity is not negotiable." It wasn't dramatic, it was revolutionary, and Creston felt it. A week later, under a canvas tent in the heart of the city, Maya stood before a crowd of hundreds. It wasn't a gala, no chandeliers, no tuxedos, just folding chairs, paper plates, kids running barefoot on the grass. Food was served buffet style by volunteers, some wearing aprons from Annie's Place, others from restaurants across the city. The event was called the Town Table, an idea Maya had shared offhand one night, not expecting anyone to take it seriously. But Elliot had. He always did. The idea was simple. One giant dinner table where anyone, regardless of background, could eat together. No hierarchy, no qualifiers, just community. Maya stood beside Ben, who held a plate of macaroni and grinned like it was his birthday. Annie made the salad. Elliot served drinks. A local band played from a small stage. This wasn't charity. This was belonging. Elliot took the mic only once, keeping it short. "This is what the future looks like," he said, "not because it's perfect, but because it's shared." Then he stepped down and joined a table of high school students and a retired mechanic. Maya walked slowly through the rows, talking to mothers with strollers, teens with questions, elderly couples with gratitude in their eyes. They didn't look at her like a symbol. They looked at her like a neighbor. She finally sat beside Ben, letting her body relax for the first time in days. He leaned in and whispered, "You did this." She shook her head gently. "We did this." The sun set behind the skyline, painting it gold, and for a few hours Creston wasn't a city of haves and have-nots. It was one town, one table, and no one ate alone. The following morning, Maya stood in the kitchen of her apartment, barefoot, hair still damp from the shower, stirring instant oatmeal while Ben scrolled through headlines. "You're on the front page again," he said, not looking up. "Do I look like a front-page person to you?" she muttered. He grinned. "Definitely not. You don't even like having your picture taken." "Exactly." She placed a bowl in front of him and sat with her own, resting her elbows on the worn table between them. It had burn marks from old hot pots, a leg that leaned slightly, and a history of whispered conversations and quiet meals. Everything felt different now, but this at least hadn't changed. "You've been quiet," Ben said. She shrugged. "Just thinking." "About?" She looked out the window. "What comes next?" It was a question that had followed her everywhere the last few weeks. What's next? What now? The gala, the backlash, the community dinner. Each step had unfolded so fast, so loud, that she hadn't had space to ask herself what she really wanted to build. Later that day, she met Elliot at a modest downtown office, the same one where the Bell Initiative had started taking shape. They sat across from each other with no agenda, just quiet urgency. "I think I'm ready," she said. "For what?" "To do more. To help lead this, for real." He smiled. "You already are." "No," she said firmly, "not just showing up. I want a desk. I want the budget sheets. I want to see where the money goes. I want to be in the rooms where decisions are made." Elliot leaned back, clearly impressed. "That can happen. I want to hire people who've lived here. I want single mothers making policy decisions. I want ex-foster kids managing outreach. I want the people we serve to run this." He nodded. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say." That afternoon, Maya walked through the initiative's new headquarters, a converted warehouse filled with fresh paint, second-hand desks, and enough heart to power a movement. On the wall at the entrance was a mural, her silhouette painted in soft golds and earthy browns, not worshipped but recognized. She didn't cry, but she touched it just once and whispered, "Okay, let's begin." A month passed, and the city felt different. Not perfect, not solved, but different. Maya stood at the back of a workshop hosted in an old gymnasium, watching a circle of teenagers talk about rent, college, jobs, fear. She didn't interrupt, just listened. One of them, a tall boy with shy eyes, looked up and said, "This is the first place I've said any of this." Maya smiled. "That's what we're here for." After the session, she walked through the space, past makeshift classrooms, therapy booths, donated laptops charging in rows. The Bell Initiative had grown fast, faster than expected, but it wasn't losing its soul. Every new program started with the same question: who needs this most? That same week, Elliot sat in his office sifting through reports, but his attention kept drifting to the digital frame on his desk. A looping video of the community dinner, frozen on the image of Maya laughing beside her brother. His phone buzzed. "Governor's office on line 2, his assistant said. "They want to talk about replicating the model statewide." He picked up the call, but even as he spoke, he thought of the bigger picture, not the money, not the headlines. The model, what they were proving. People didn't need saving, they needed platforms. And Maya had become the architect of something that made people feel powerful again. In the neighborhoods once dismissed as rough, change rolled in like dawn, slow but steady. The Bell Initiative launched a new micro-grant program, small amounts, no red tape. People used them to buy stoves, fix roofs, register for classes, or start a side hustle. One woman used hers to print her poetry and sell it on street corners. Elliot visited her personally, bought every copy. "You just want to be on my dedication page," she teased. "Only if it's the villain to hero arc," he replied. Meanwhile, Maya was on a mission of her own. She visited shelters, youth centers, addiction recovery homes, not for photo ops, for conversations. She asked what was missing, what still hurts, what they feared. And then she wrote those answers down, by hand, in a notebook that never left her side. She called it the blueprint. It became the soul of the next phase of the initiative, one page at a time. The ripples went wider than Creston. A bakery in Detroit put a sign out. inspired by Maya Bell. Pay what you can. A youth center in Austin named a new wing after her. A startup in Seattle pledged to tie 10% of all profits to a People First fund, citing Elliott's speech as the catalyst. Media stopped questioning her legitimacy. Now they wanted interviews. She gave a few, but only on her terms. No makeup team, no stylized lighting. Use real light, she told them. That's all we've ever had. The town that once forgot her name now honored it. Maya didn't let it change her. She still lived in the same apartment, still worked one shift a week at Annie's, even though she didn't need to. I like staying grounded, she told Elliot. He nodded. Just don't forget to rest. I'll rest when this isn't needed anymore. The diner smelled like fresh brewed coffee and cinnamon toast. The usual clatter of plates and quiet hum of conversation filled the space with life. It was a normal morning, if any day could still be called normal. Elliot sat in a booth by the window. No suit today, just jeans and a long-sleeved tee. His phone buzzed every few seconds on the table, but he didn't touch it. Maya walked in from the back, hair tied back, apron on, sleeves rolled. Her face lit up, not in surprise, but in quiet recognition. "You still don't get tired of diner food?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from him. He smiled. "It's not the food I come for." She rolled her eyes, but a small laugh escaped. "Feels weird," she said, "being able to choose this. Before it was survival. Now I choose to be here." "That's freedom," he replied, "real freedom." She nodded thoughtfully. "Ben starts his internship next week," she said. "Engineering firm across town. He's nervous." "He'll crush it. He's not used to being seen." "You changed that." She paused, her gaze drifting toward the window. We did. The waitress, new girl, barely 20, brought their food. Maya thanked her by name. "Funny," Maya said. "A year ago I was afraid of being noticed. Now I'm afraid of what happens if I'm not." Elliot reached across the table, not for her hand, but for her attention. "You don't have to carry it all, Maya. That's why we built this, so others can rise too." She nodded slowly, accepting the truth of it. They ate in comfortable silence. Outside, Creston moved forward, slow, imperfect, alive. Inside, two people who should never have crossed paths sat across from each other, not as a CEO and a waitress, but as equals. Cameras rolled as Maya stepped onto the stage at the new downtown community center, the Bell House. The building was modern but welcoming. Bright murals, wood-paneled walls, soft lighting. It was her vision brought to life. She looked out over a crowd that included city leaders, volunteers, families, and people who once stood in line at soup kitchens, but now led programs themselves. "I never wanted to be a leader," she began. "I just wanted to survive. I thought that was all I could ask." She glanced at Elliot in the front row. He gave her a small nod. "But I learned something. Survival isn't the goal. Thriving is, and you don't thrive alone." She told the story again, briefly, honestly. The dumpster, the hunger, the shame, the shift that came not from a rescue, but from someone who stopped to see her. "And now," she finished, "we keep seeing each other." The applause was thunderous, but she didn't soak in it. She stepped down from the stage and walked into the crowd, hugging children, shaking hands with single mothers, holding the arm of an elderly man who'd just moved into subsidized housing. She didn't want to be idolized. She wanted to be accessible. That was her revolution. Elliot joined her later near the back. "They'll never stop talking about you," he said. "I'm okay with that," she replied, "as long as they keep listening." Years passed, not decades, just enough to settle the dust, to see which dreams had taken root. The Bell Initiative expanded to 7 cities. Maya trained leaders from all walks of life, former inmates, refugees, students with lived experience instead of degrees. The phrase, "seen and served," became more than a motto. It became a movement. Ben graduated college, first in their family. His speech made national headlines. Elliot scaled back his role at Trivesta, quietly shifting more of his time to education and community equity. He was still rich, still famous, but the man in the headlines was no longer a mystery. He had found purpose in humility. One rainy afternoon, years after the first moment that changed everything, Maya sat once again behind Annie's place. Not scavenging, just thinking. She ran her fingers along the brick wall, the metal dumpster long since replaced by city sanitation upgrades. She closed her eyes. The cold didn't bite like it used to. She wasn't hungry. She wasn't scared. She stood and walked back through the alley, through the back door of the diner, where a new waitress was struggling to balance too many plates. Maya stepped in and caught one before it fell. "First time?" she asked. The girl nodded, flustered. "You'll get it," Maya said with a smile. "You've got help now." And just like that, the cycle broke. Because someone had stayed. Someone had remembered.